Hello and welcome to Dungeoneered, a podcast dedicated to discussing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Josh.
So today, Josh, I don't really know at all what we're talking about. You tried to explain it to me a little bit earlier. You said some time in the week that you were changing the topic, and I have absolutely no idea because I am so organized and so on top of it. So what are we actually discussing today?
Well, sorry about switching it. I think this is a better topic for us to talk about. It's an event called Karsus's Folly, and there's a lot of setup beforehand. So I'm going to start with the society that Karsus was born into. The society is called Netheril, and they are a majocratic human society. And this is from a time when there were 10th 11th and even 12th level spells. Magic was just different around this time. It was a lot more accessible and stronger.
Have they weaved the loss of 10th, 11th, 12th into their lore?
Yeah. It's all involved in the lore now. And it's really cool. I'm pretty sure there are campaigns set around all of this story I'm about to tell you. So you could literally be playing through these big moments where this type of stuff is lost. A way to think of Netheril for people who've just played regular D&D. If you ever go in a dungeon and find all this ancient artifacts that are extremely advanced and weird magical items and whatnot, the type of society you're finding there, that could be Netheril. That is the type of society it was. It's this ancient society that was way more advanced than us. Now, Netheril is early on in Toral's history, and they were a magocracy. And for those of you who don't know what a magocracy is, it's when a society is ruled by mages and those with magical ability. Normally, there is a way to progress in your societal class by showing off more magical prowess. Sadly, in these societies, normally those with limited to no magical powers are treated terribly, and Netheril was no different. They actually have super harsh consequences for anybody that kills or hurts a mage in any way, but it's only a light fee for hurting anybody with no magical power.
Wait, so what you're saying is a mage could slaughter farmers who don't have magical powers and they're not in trouble?
They just had to pay money, yeah.
Ooh.
And
10 gold ahead, baby.
I bet you if they could convince whoever the judge was that it was all in the name of magic, I was getting stronger, I was doing something, they would get away with it.
I'm just experimenting on these poor peasants. Don't worry about me.
Even worse than that is some races, I saw some saying tieflings and stuff like that, killing them is fine. They consider it purification.
Nice. Nice. That is
the society we're dealing with.
Society.
Yeah, that's the really harsh society we're talking about right now. Now, Netheril also had a very harsh class structure. There's high Netheril and low Netheril, and it's really simply the haves and the have-nots. The high Netheril live in these beautiful floating cities they called enclaves. Each of these cities is run and ruled by an archmage that keeps it floating and can make laws and decisions with little to no oversight in his floating city.
Wait, so he makes the city float?
Yeah. So there's a 10th level spell called Proctive's Move Mountain, and that floats a city.
You kidding me?
That's just what it does.
You can float cities with spells in D&D?
Yeah, and so that was a 10th level spell, and but it doesn't stay up there forever. So why they are such an advanced empire, there was a famous scholar that created these things called mythalar, and these things are giant. They are huge, like a size of a football field in diameter crystal balls, and they can be connected to the weave and kind of pull power and gain power from it.
Does the weave ever run out?
It gets repaired by Mistra. Mistra is constantly repairing it. If she didn't, all magic would die. It would be terrible.
Okay. I was could you just take all the weave's magic and then
yeah, so Mistral, she's a god, and that's her whole duty, is just making sure magic keeps going. Especially when people are doing crazy things like these.
Got it. So they have these giant crystal balls.
These mythalars are like batteries for the floating cities and making sure they stay alive and stay in the air. And now, back to what we were talking about, low Netheril, as you can probably guess, they live on the ground. They have little to no access to learning or
yes,
ways,
the peasants. The peasants, as it were.
Ways of advancing in the society, so they couldn't really. It would be harder for them to become a mage or a wizard of some sort and gain the magic required to make them go up in class.
Yes, peasant,
Yeah,
work the
peasant,
ground,
classic.
till it for me, please. Thank you.
Now, one of yeah, I already talked about it. You're making me skip around my notes, man.
If not, I will turn you into a zombie.
Which there's a I think it's 10th level spell. Oh, I forget what it's called now because I didn't research it because I didn't think we were going to talk about it. It creates a massive rain cloud, and if you get rained on it, you're raised as a zombie under the caster's control.
That's so awesome.
Yeah,
That's
dude.
amazing.
Spells
I
over
can
9th level are super powerful. There's one that you can cast over a large area, which a lot of the enclaves actually had cast on them. You just kind of can screw with the laws of physics inside your magical area that you set up. You can set it to be whatever kind of change you want. It could be anything from the gravity's really low to once you step in, you can fly, to no dragon can enter, to there's so many different options with this spell.
Can we still access these spells? Are they still like around? I mean, obviously they're in
The
like
only
D&D
way I
books.
heard of that you can cast over 9th level spells is if you have multiple casters casting Wish and also Human Sacrifice.
Ah, yes. The
Yes.
classic. The
Classic
classic.
moral conundrum. Do
Classic.
you want to fly in this
Yes.
area? Then kill a lot of people.
Hey, some sacrifices are worth making. I can't believe I just said
You
that.
can't say that, Aaron.
It's too late. It's my inner lich.
Now, one of the things in the lore, one of the arcanists who made their myth lore and made their city, they were working really hard to try to make their myth lore better than everybody else's and kind of make it more powerful. And they found a way to give it sentience. And I just love that
What?
idea. So there's
They
this
gave it
giant
sentience.
crystal ball that is now sentient somewhere in the world. And just having that at like the end or somewhere in a dungeon would be so cool. And they get to talk with this thing of massive magical power.
I mean, the only person that would even be capable of doing such a thing is a halfling. So we
Which
obviously in the lore had to have been created by
I
a
did
halfling.
learn this because I wanted to know. Now, on the list of humanoids that it's okay to kill, halflings are near the
You did?
bottom.
No, they're not. I don't believe
200
you.
gold pieces is the fee for killing a halfling.
Oh, come on. It's because they're half the
It's like
size?
300 for a dwarf, like 500 for an elf. It's like 1,000 for a gnome because they're worth it. Let's be honest.
This is why in every homebrew setting, halflings need to be the superior race.
You're
You
really putting
destroy
some
them.
weird ideals out there today. Halflings are the superior race. Kill people for flying abilities.
Listen, just because you don't like halflings doesn't mean you pay 200 gold for your fine for killing one.
Now, when you have this kind of a powerful magical society, what is the one thing that could take it down?
Halflings.
No,
I couldn't resist.
I know. I could see it coming as soon as I asked it.
Shouldn't have said anything. You shouldn't
No.
have said
Well, it's in my notes. I wanted to say it. It was a good lineup for the next part. A creature,
Oh man.
the biggest risk to them is a anti-magic creature or a creature that feeds on magic, which is of course what happened. When they have all this magic in one area, of course it's going to draw creatures that eat magic.
Are
So,
there okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Are there even creatures that eat magic in D&D? Like
well, there
5e?
is
I don't even
technically,
know.
but also in 5e, I believe one of the Mind Flayer's creations, not a Mind Witness. It's kind of like if I'm remembering correctly, it's a white sphere with a red eye, and it has a bunch of tendrils like a Mind Flayer, but instead of having eye stalks at the end, they are like those little like claw pads that are on Displacer Beasts.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now because I can.
But yeah, so that's there is something that does, but I think the last time we had these guys stat blocks, the Feyrim, uh it was 3rd edition, and so they are a really cool and devastating race to throw against any sort of spellcasters.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. They just eat your spell.
Yeah, and one of the big things about the Netheril society is when they were that powerful with magic, what do wizards still in our in modern Toril
I'm really hoping I can say halfling to this question.
You can't. What do wizards in modern Toril still do to keep learning more?
Living forever.
Yeah, they try to live forever. They do some sort of magic, whether it's
Nailed
becoming
it.
a lich or something else. And so, in this society where people in charge are the best at magic, they're all starting to get to like 300 or way more because they're all prolonging their lives.
I mean, that's pretty like. I mean, are these like humans or like
Yeah,
do
they're all
elves live
humans.
forever?
Yeah.
How long do elves live in normal D&D?
I think 1,000 years.
Yeah, so I mean, like,
Well,
shoot,
so these are all humans, but
humans are living triple their age.
well, I think that so 300 was just a number I randomly came out with my head out of my head. But I
I
think
mean,
they would live. They would easily live thousands of years if they had no issue. Now,
that's wild.
yeah, now when these creatures came to Netheril, they attacked and started to devour magic, as you would assume. And part of the magic that they went after was the magic prolonging the lives of the leaders. So that got pretty bad real quick for a lot of the
I can't imagine.
Now, the Faerûn, just so I can describe them, they're horrifying. They're creepy looking flesh cones with sharp teeth and four arms. In our Discord, I posted a image of a
What is that?
windsock.
Oh, that's what the windsock was for.
That's what the windsock was for. Exactly.
Ah.
I heard them described as a windsocked body. And I was like, that's amazing. And I was like, what is a windsock? And so I looked it up.
I was so confused what you were trying to get across with the windsock.
Now you know.
Describing the flesh cones.
Now, I did see a few places they say that the Faerûn attacked Netheril for retaliation, but I couldn't find any like conclusive thing like this is what Netheril did. And I did see some stuff that kind of made it sound like something with their magic kind of started to affect the home of the Faerûn and whatnot. They were going extinct or whatnot, but I couldn't find proof of that. Now, this war between Netheril and the Faerûn, because they had the Netheril had moving cities and whatnot, they actually were able to keep up the fighting for a very long time, and they could have kept it up nearly indefinitely with their kind of power.
Pretty hard to conquer a floating city when you can fly around and stop anything from getting to you.
Yeah, I mean, all the Faerûn fly, so that is
that is an issue.
Yes, yeah. As long as they could get on the island, I think they're safe. But with the rapid aging of a lot of the mages who were controlling and flying these cities, the most powerful people in the nation began dying quickly. One of the greatest, considered the greatest wizards of Netheril, Iolam, he was actually the creator of the Mythalar. He heard of all this stuff going on and the war, and he is just like, I'm out of here. And so he turned himself into a lich and ran into hiding.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'd do, right?
Of course.
Mean, you have no chance.
But because he was so wise and so highly respected in Netheril society, this caused everyone else to freak out, causing massive citizen unrest, and pretty much led to the horrible, horrible situation that Karsus became in. Now, before all of this war and whatnot happened, there was a kid named Karsus that was born, and he was a prodigy. He had unparalleled talent. There was a story that he had cast his first cantrip at the age of 2, which...
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive.
And I mean, he was able to raise the mountain, so create a floating city and a Mythalar to power it by the age 22.
Yeah,
he was the youngest archmage in all of Netheril, and he would have been considered one of the greatest wizard of Netheril, except he was considered childish and kind of impulsive. And so Iolam, being this wise wizard, was still the greatest.
Okay.
Now, when he was this young child, this 22-year-old that creates this floating city, the society is so used to these super old, like 100-year-old or more wizards running these cities, they were really nervous and thought the city would like fall out of the sky, or there was a lot of issues that they were worried about with this young kid having his own enclave. And so what he did was he hired some of the best architects in all of Netheril to build these like crazy architecture all around his place and all these unique buildings, and it worked. A lot of people were like, hey, I want a really cool building. I'm gonna go live on Karsus's enclave.
Yeah, why not?
And so he actually became one of the greatest learning centers in all of Netheril. Actually took place on his enclave. And now with this unrest and war, Karsus started to be really stressed by it. And the people started to be like, you're supposed to be the best. What are you doing? Solve this problem. Pounding him every day. And so at this point, he was about the age of like 300, they said. And he spent over a decade researching a spell with the power to take care of all of these Faerûn. And
Dang.
I mean, we know how, like, there are rules in D&D for researching and creating a new spell. And we know how expensive it is. So the amount of time to create the high level spell he wanted must have cost insane amounts of gold. Like, I heard like hundreds of millions of gold easily.
Yeah, I mean, his spell is crazy.
Now, the gods have destroyed all of his research afterwards, so little is known of what 100% is required to cast the spell. But what we do know is that it had a 6-hour casting time, and we don't know the objects required, but we know some of the requirements to enchant the items needed for the spell. Just to enchant the items, one of the things you need is a stone-filled gizzard of a golden dragon, and you need a part of the flesh of a pituitary gland of a Tarrasque.
Well, I wonder the lore behind that. Just because they're the strongest creatures, or what?
I am not 100% sure, but you also need a 12-headed Hydra's bile.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
they're
weird.
very specific. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
what about a dragon's gizzard? Makes it so you can cast the spell.
yeah, a dragon's gizzard. It's just a very common spell component. Now, he created the spell called Karsus's Avatar, and I'm going to pause for some dramatic tension here. It lets the
Waiting.
caster become a god of their choosing.
Wait, of your choosing?
Of
Like,
their choosing, replacing a current god with themselves the moment the spell was complete.
Dang.
And Karsus, in all his research and whatnot, and what he knew magic. So he's like, I know who I'm going to switch with. I'll switch with Mistral, the goddess of magic. And in one fell swoop, I'll destroy all of the Faerûn. Now, this is where Karsus' impulsiveness becomes his downfall. Now, as we've talked about before, Mistral was needed to repair the weave.
Oh,
and
right.
she
Yeah,
kind of does this all the time. And it's become
she's...
like kind of a subconscious thing where she's just always repairing it, but she can still like work with her clerics and whatnot, but she's just always doing it. And the moment he cast this spell, he transformed and he gained an immense knowledge as well. And he instantly knew he'd screwed up. He's like, oh no.
Nothing like gaining the knowledge to know that you screwed up.
It's the best, the worst way to get it. And
awkward.
Mistral lost her power to fix and control the weave, and it would have been destroyed. There would have been no magic in D&D at all. But Mistral, that was her name at the time, Mistral, gave up her life to save the weave. But in her death, Karsus lost his connection with Mistral's power, and then in her resetting the magic by saving it, all magic stopped for a second, just like a reset on a computer. Now, the biggest issue with that is there's floating cities.
Oh, really?
So we have a desert now. It's called like Anaroch, and it is the land underneath the cities.
That's awkward. Nothing like resetting your computer when your computer floats.
Yeah, exactly. Now this huge empire leaning on magic, just all of a sudden it all shuts down, and Karsus was like almost instantly slain, and with his last remaining power, he was able to like prolong his life a little bit, which I think he regrets because he fell to the ground and watched the cities fall with him and crash and burn, and just watched all his loved ones die because he preserved his life a little bit, which is just rough.
No, that's a little rough.
Because of how gods work, almost immediately a deity of magic was reincarnated, and it was no longer Mistral, it was now Mistra, which is the name I've been using a lot when I should have been using Mistral.
Assuming now she's not as powerful, hence why you can't have 12 level spells.
Oh, no, she is as powerful. She just said, screw this is never happening again, I'm not allowing it. And she rebuilt the weave, and she made it different. So she prevented people from learning quickly, because you could just learn a lot faster and a lot higher spells quickly before. Now you have to go up levels like we do in D&D, and all the ways that we have to do it now. And all of those were put in place to protect the weave at this point. She limited the amount of spells a wizard could remember at once. That's why wizards have to prepare spells. And
Wow,
she
what a jerk.
forbade anyone from casting 10th level or higher spells. In
Oh, I see.
in her time that she took to rebuild the weave, by the end of it, she was able to save 3 of the floating cities and safely bring them to the ground. And the people immediately just ran and left. And now I believe it's covered over by the sand of that place. And this is the
Dang.
story of Karsus's Folly.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
He's kind of crazy.
I mean, he was trying to do good, but and literally, if he chose any other god to take the place of, that would have been fine. Nothing would have gone wrong
Why was he trying to steal the goddess of magic's power? Because he
because
wanted
he
more
knew
magic?
magic and he knew how to control it and he knew how to use it. And he's like, oh, I'll. It's like going from Xbox original to Xbox One, and you're like, no, I got this. I know that better than I know a PS controller.
I guess he wanted to become a god, but wanted the least amount of damage as possible. So he was thinking he could take over Mistral place because he knows magic so well.
Yeah, yeah. So he was thinking he'd be able to use it easier, use the power better than he could on another deity. And so by using the magic he gained, he could just wipe out all the Faerun.
I mean, he did wipe out a lot of stuff.
He did. He did wipe out a lot of stuff, just not what he was expecting to wipe out. Now,
That
actually,
sucks so much.
as I was redoing the research for this, because I'd already like learned of this previously, I was remembering the the video game Dragon Age. And spoilers for anybody who hasn't done a lot of the little extra stuff for Inquisition.
I haven't even played it, so spoilers for me.
It's really good. You totally should.
I haven't.
So in Inquisition, you the Dread Wolf, which I'll try to keep as a spoiler free as I can. So the Dread Wolf, you meet with him and talk with him, and he kind of tells you of the elven society that was, because the elves in Dragon Age are like either wood elves or they're like kept in cities and they're very like kept down, kind of kept in the ghettos and whatnot. And so he's explaining of the societies and the kind of dungeons you've seen of these once powerful elven empire, and he tells you how it used to be so connected with magic that when what he did to create this separation of magic in the world, he created this place called the Fade. It ended up destroying his whole nation. And I was like, that's an awful lot like Karsus' Folly,
Yeah, I mean,
where they were so involved with magic that the being ripped from it just destroyed their civilization, and he feels terrible about it. And so he's actually set up to be the villain of Dragon Age 4, where he's called the elves to him and he's trying to rebuild the elven empire.
yeah, I mean, I know even like in today's world, people are like worried about that with like electricity and stuff. If we become so attached to electricity and then it gets removed, then we're all dead.
Yeah, that
I have
is
a
a big
similar thing.
problem. But yeah, that is
So
a
but
common
looking at
thing I've heard about.
looking at Karsus's avatar,
Uh-huh.
like just on the internet, there's not a lot about it in terms of like
What it
it was
does?
in second edition. Yeah, I mean it makes you into a god of your choice, from what I can tell. But I can't
Yeah.
find like the original like stat block of it.
Well, it's like a spell, so it has the description, which the effect is the spell was able, allowing its user to become a god of their choosing, replacing a current god with themselves the moment the spell was completed.
Yeah, I just can't find like the original description of it. Probably because I just can't seem to find it.
Well, so that's the thing. I don't think it was ever a spell people could actually cast.
Got it.
Like, no player, it was never a player handbook thing. It was like, oh, this powerful NPC in the world is working on this. And then in the next part, they've completed this and cast this, and this is how the world's changed.
Oh, I know there's a spell similar, kind of similar to it in Pathfinder. I used to play Pathfinder a long time ago, and I know you could like turn yourself into like a super powerful avatar of doom and destruction.
I mean, I don't think that's the same as taking the place of a god, but yes.
No, not at all. But it's at least something similar to it. But yeah,
Yeah.
this spell's wild. The spell's not supposed to make the caster permanently into a deity. Temporarily merge with the deity and wield their power for as long as the spell lasts.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. And so he didn't plan on like Mistral dying, because Mistral wasn't dead. She was just not allowed to do what she didn't have any power anymore. And so he was going to use the power, then she was going to get it back, and he didn't realize how much she used to repair the weave at all times.
Yeah, it also said that it's believed that she, when she became reincarnated, she stole his the information from his enclave and then sent it on an eternal
Yeah.
journey to the ends of the universe.
Yeah, I didn't want to explain that, so that's why I just said, "Oh, it's been destroyed by the gods."
Yeah,
But
that's
yes,
wild. She like stole it from him and then sent it on an
off
eternal
into the
journey to the end of
world.
the universe.
Which I feel like
Forever
that's
gone.
so dangerous. Like just sending it out, like it's like sending it out in the astral sea. Like there are creatures out there that could find that.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could do all sorts of stuff with that kind of thing. Are you kidding me? You could make all sorts of cool stuff with that. So, how would then we kind of turn this and use this in our own games? This kind of like idea. How
Oh,
would
I
we
love
kind of like
Theron. I love the
shape it,
idea
mold it?
of having a society so built around one thing that it attracts the one thing that eats that or does something with that. And so having the adventurers be like non magic users or something, and they're being hired to come in and save these magic users that are actually like way more powerful than them, but it actually makes sense that they are calling on adventurers instead of just doing it themselves like most other quests. It kind of is like, wait, aren't you like super powerful? Why are you asking me to do this?
No, yeah, I like that idea a lot too. Like that kind of like concept of creating a society that relies so much on something and then having any kind of group, whether it's the party or not, remove it from your world and kind of create this whole giant catastrophe.
Yeah. No, I
But I
also
mean,
love
it's
the
also
Mythalar. The idea of that as a thing and an interesting thing to have characters find. An interesting, like, this is your reward at the end of a large dungeon. You find a Mythalar and maybe have it grant some ability or something.
yeah, I mean, I also just like the idea of finding these like cities, like if you placed cities, like these ancient tech cities all over your world, you could easily take stuff from this and like throw it into your world of like, there's a crash city up, or down south that you can go and explore that was remnants of an ancient civilization. That'd be really, really fun to explore as a player.
Yeah.
I mean, probably a lot of work to like plan it out as a DM, but I mean, I know a lot of players who would just want to be like, yeah, we're gonna go down there and look for cool magic stuff.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like there are a bunch of these old civilizations in D&D lore that if you don't even have to like learn all about them, just learn enough to write some interesting like notes they might find or just theme the dungeon as if it was part of this, or it could be like an ancient skyscraper that is now like so buried in sand that you're going through and it's actually a skyscraper you're going through, but it's
Yeah.
under the ground. It's a dungeon now.
Right, you could even probably like if you could find, I don't know where you'd find this, but if you could find information on all these cities, you could probably even just copy and paste type of deal. Like kind of a little bit of like what these societies were like, how they functioned, how they worked, and you could save a lot of time doing that just by looking at how D&D, how Wizards of the Coast kind of like created this whole thing, and you could probably even just take pieces of that you wanted and create an entire society without doing hardly any work.
Yeah, I mean on Forgotten Realms wiki, that's where there's a lot of info about the Netherese group that is make up the Majocratic nation of Netheril.
Be a super cool thing as like a player to go and explore like a whole huge ancient ruined city or even like a tower like you said that's now sunk into the sand or anything like that. It'd be really fun to go explore and like see what what was once a powerful civilization that had crumbled and fell to its knees. And then even as like a player, because like in D&D, all the spell information and so much of the lore is like lost and gone. It'd be really fun as a player to like go in and discover that of any kind of world that you have. It'd be really, really cool.
Yeah,
It's like an image of one of the cities.
yeah. There's this. They call it the Enclave of Eleanor and Ileanar. Ileanar.
I have no idea how to pronounce that.
Yeah, it's one of the
Alienar?
largest
Alienar?
enclaves created. This city was the home. Oh, this is okay. This is it says one of the last enclaves created. This city was the home of the legendary arcanist Karsus. So that
Yeah,
is
there we go.
specifically Karsus's home.
Yeah, this is his place that he ended up doing all of his terrible stuff from.
All of his terrible, terrible, terrible stuff that brought down the destruction of his whole nation.
Yeah. I mean, in my world, I kind of have stuff similar to maybe not similar to floating cities, but similar to like ancient magic. So I have a thing in my world called ancient magic, which is pretty much just this homebrew thing that I made that allows people to cast spells that are stronger than ninth level spells. Essentially, they're just ancient old magic that was mainly used for destruction and chaos to like conquer and divide. And essentially, most of that information has been lost except for a few ancient teachers. So, for example, one of the archmages knows how to cast ancient magic, and they can still teach people how to use ancient magic. But a lot of ancient magic secrets have been lost. So where it used to be, a lot of the ancient magic used to be used for healing and creation and stuff like that. Because it was lost and people only cared about the conquering aspect and destruction aspect, most of the healing of ancient magic and things has been lost. It's only mostly focused now on destruction. So most people who learn ancient magic learn how to like blow things up better, stuff like that. So that's another thing you could possibly do with this type of thing is start making, I mean, obviously you have to be careful, but start making different spells that are maybe better than ninth level spells, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, or introduce like a really story important magic item that is required for some other ancient dungeon of the Netherese society.
Well, yeah, how it kind of works in my world, how I did this kind of thing in my world is I didn't want people who were playing like fighters or, people who can't cast spells like barbarians too. I wanted them to be able to tap into ancient magic. And so how I did it was I made my own homebrew magic items that were very strong but required ancient magic, like the knowledge of ancient magic and the unlocking of ancient magic within yourself to wield and or wear the armor. So like spellcasters, they get ancient magic spell slots, whereas non-casters get the ability to like wield these powerful armors and weapons. So that's kind of how I kind of did it in my world.
It's actually a really cool way of balancing that. That's always been a
Yeah. So
hard thing
then,
to balance is
yeah, because then
the exponential nature of magic users and the really very linear progression of the fighters and rogues and barbarians.
right. So that's kind of why I did that whole split. And so then there's even like matching sets of armors and weapons, like wielded by ancient people who are ancient beings and things. So if you find them and you can combine the two, much like the storm giants belt to strength and then the hammers, like if you get the hammer and the belt, it like combines to be
You
super
also need
epic.
the goop. You also need
Right,
the
right,
gauntlets of ogre power.
right. So like if
Which
you
I had
do
that
that,
once and I was so
I know, I
happy. And we
remember that.
didn't get to eat. Like, we fought in an arena and that was it. Then it was the
Yeah,
end of that.
I remember that. It was so awesome. But
I
yeah,
love
so kind
that
of like
weapon so much. It was so
that.
cool.
It's so awesome. But yeah, like that. So you can have like I have like sets of armor and then weapons and things like that that the players have been trying to go and find in order to get stronger and stronger as they get near to the end of the campaign.
Mm-hmm. Which I just gotta talk about that that hammer that you just brought up. The idea of it and the way that they leveled it was actually brilliant to force you to have a belt of giant strength and the gauntlets of ogre power mean that one of your attunement slots is literally wasted. So it's the
Oh yeah,
same
I
as
mean
if
it's
if
a
the
powerful item.
yeah, it's the same as if the hammer of thunderbolts required 2 attunement slots.
Right. But you get what is it like 20 something strength? Do you get more than that?
It's +5 to whatever the belt gave you. So I had the 21 belt, so the Hill Giant Strength belt, and then the Hammer of Thunderbolts gave it +5, so it was 26.
That's so much.
And you can throw it, and it does a lot of damage against giants.
Yeah, so I kind of did a similar thing, but with ancient magic items and stuff like that, where you can combine them and
Oh,
have
there he
them
is.
become extra
I
powerful.
hadn't heard him yet, but there he was.
Yeah, she's back. I fed her so that she wasn't screaming, and now she's here. I'll hold her. I'll hold her because if
Just
she's not,
let her
I'll hold her.
outside and just close the door.
She doesn't
Oh,
scream if she's like on my shoulder.
uh-huh. We'll see. We'll see with my editing.
Probably not. You'll probably hear her in the background. Oh, there she
There
is
she
again.
was. There she was. See, I feel like if we just make it clear, like, that's a bird. We are
Oh,
dealing with a bird
absolutely.
here. I'm trying to edit it out, guys. I feel
Absolutely.
like
That's why we should have a warning at the beginning of each episode that says, "Warning: we
warning.
have
There
a
is an
pet. Aaron
irritating little
has a
bird
parrot."
that is super cute, but it's a little irritating.
Listen, it's not that irritating, only just slightly.
Ridiculous. Now,
True.
because you mentioned the thinking about the higher than 10 level spells, I was just looking at the epic magic list on the Forgotten Realms wiki, and there's one called the Bonfire of Insanity.
It's
The spell can only be cast while it is raining.
wait, what?
Exactly. The smoke of the bonfire mixed with the rain clouds. This causes a process that filled the rain clouds with vile energy that then rained down using the rain as its medium within 1 mile.
What the crap?
On hitting the ground, corpses, even those that were already skeletal, were raised as ghouls. Humanoids that were hit by the rain contracted a disease. The disease turned the humanoid into a ghoul that was starved and hungry for flesh after 24 hours. The caster was not safe from it. Curing this disease was only possible with a magic that was at least as powerful as a heal spell. The undead that were created through this means were under the control of nobody, including the caster.
Wow,
So
that's
you're just saying, screw this area, and you
yeah,
leave.
that's crazy. That's so terrible. And you
And
you'd
it's
have to
good for
like stand
nobody. It's not even good for the caster. It's completely
you have to
pointless.
like yeah, you have to set up like a little shack in order to cast it, and then
You just have an umbrella, and you're like, I'm
you
good.
just stand under your umbrella. But I mean, you could take those spells
Now,
and put them in your game if you wanted. Like
you
you could do all
can, and
sorts
it's
of
a
like
really
that.
cool way for a villain to just do something so evil and so menacing to be like, that's the evil guy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you don't want to give your party something like that, you could also, like you said, just give it to a villain. I mean, a villain who takes the place of a god, even if it's only temporarily, is a
Yeah.
crazy storyline.
But if you give your players the bonfire of insanity, what are they going to do with that?
Destroy your world.
Yeah, why would they do that?
They're the players, man, they're chaotic.
It's true. It's true. They are players. Uh,
But I mean, that would be a really fun story arc, though. Not, I mean, the bonfire too, but just even having the whole entire like campaign be built around the party trying to stop someone from either a killing a god and taking over its spot, or just like switching places with a god. Instead of the typical like I'm trying to ascend to godhood, it's more of I'm trying to steal the place of a god. It'd be an interesting storyline.
yeah. And especially if one of the players has some sort of like relation to that god, whether they're a cleric or it's literally familial, just a relationship would be really interesting. Is just this god and this person's trying to take them down.
That'd be really fun. Like you, just to throw it in as somebody's backstory. You know, if their god is the god of war or whatever, the god of war is slowly losing control as his godhood is essentially being stolen by somebody. Be a really interesting dynamic to have your
Yeah.
players kind of be
I,
intertwined with.
yeah, I have a player in my current campaign that is a follower of the god of death, and like early on in the history of the world,
It's that's a great god to follow.
hey, it's not death as in bringing death. It's death as in like doing like
Celebration of
it's like Caduceus in Critical Role. Like
yeah,
you help them go to death. You help them pass on. Like they have an innate knowledge of all burial rituals of the world that is required. So if they come across a dead body, they will begin the process and do the whatever burial rite is for their where they are.
I was really hoping it was like the god of death in terms of like conquering and slaughtering.
That would no,
Because
that
that's
is
a
not
crazy
the type of
character.
game I'm playing. But so he follows this deity, and this deity's like rival kind of is proving that he's not as evil as they all thought, and it might have just been propaganda against him that says he's so evil.
Awkward.
And so he has this innate hatred for this person, like he grew up hating this person because that's what he was taught in his religion and where he grew up. And this person's not acting at all like he's supposed to. And so it's this really interesting dynamic of what's going on here?
So awkward. To like have to unlearn all your innate hatred for somebody for a different god, you said, right?
Yeah, they are a different god.
So is there like in your world, is it like a giant war between the two then? Like are they like constantly
No,
fighting?
what it was is that there's a lot of misinformation about it, but this one is called Kruvesh the Slaughterer, which is a nickname he got because of this propaganda. Kruvesh,
The guy that's in that valley.
yes, Kruvesh was taking out a bunch of the creations of this god because they were trying to do something. He was the deity of balance and equality, and he believed that what they were doing was going against his domain and going to bring about chaos. And
So
so
he wanted to bring balance and
well,
then
no,
ended up
he
fighting
had to because that's his whole thing. And so all the stories say is, oh, he was slaughtering a bunch of us. And so how are you going to take that? Oh, this guy
yeah,
slaughters
I
a
like
bunch of
that
people.
idea.
He's the good guy, right?
I like the idea of a god of balance. That's a good idea. Where like you have this god of balance who has to maintain order within your world, even to the point of like in sort of in your world where like he's now kind of pinned as this bad god because he restored, even if this is a violent act, but that's what he was required to do because he's the god of balance. To like
Exactly.
That's a kind of a good idea. I like that idea a lot.
Thank you. I was really happy with that when it finally came out that wait, what is your domain? Because all I knew is he was called Kruvesh the Slaughterer, and the place that he was imprisoned in the world had aberrations and monstrosities coming from it because of some of the magic seeping out, and people always just assumed it was Kruvesh's magic that was causing this, but no, it was the bindings that were causing it, the kind of magic in the bindings that caused this monsters to be created. And so everybody continued to blame him for more and more evil, even though he was imprisoned.
That's that's so awkward.
Yeah, and so when he gets revealed that he got freed by a group that believed he was evil, and he's like, "What have you done? You're horrible. Why would I like help you?" And they're like, "Aren't you like a slaughterer or whatnot?" And he's like, "No. What are you talking about?"
No, I'm just the god of balance.
And so they had to fight through these people that were fighting really hard to free him, only for them to be incredibly disappointed in the end.
Here's the question: how'd your players take it?
Well, they were fighting really hard to stop his resurrection, and that was one of the times that I just let the dice roll where they may. I was like, I'm just gonna roll like he has this. They literally had a. It was all of them. They had a not a planetar, one of those high celestials on their side because they had helped him previously, and they were like, we're gonna do this. We need someone on our side, so they called him in. A diva, that's what it was, and it was the diva had a turn and two players had a turn, and they had to do 36 hit points, and they were like level like 10 11 at this point, so that's not uncalled for. That could easily be done. 36 hit points in 3 turns.
Oh yeah, that's like a one turn thing.
Everybody missed every single hit. The diva gets like 4, the players got 3 and 2 plus a bonus action, and they all missed every single one of their attacks, and we're like, what is going on here? And so that was pretty devastating. And then he gets resurrected.
So did the players wait? So did the players were the players trying to prevent
Yeah.
Krevesh?
Yes. Kruvesh from being resurrected.
Okay, and then did they know that he was a god of balance, or did they think he was like the god of
They just knew he was a slaughterer, and they knew that the people trying to resurrect him had done evil things, and so they're just like, okay.
Have they learned he's the god of balance?
Yes. And so what they did immediately after they had failed, they waited until the wizard had his ability to teleport again. They teleported and went to the capital of Crodain, the nation they were in. And Kruvesh was there, and Kruvesh was meeting with the heads of Crodain, and they were called in, and they kind of had this whole moment where they were like in this awkward, oh yeah, we were there when he was resurrected. This is what happened. And they had to just recount it, and they weren't even the ones like on trial or being like, they weren't important at the time, so they kind of just had to sit there as they were interrogated, and Kruvesh was interrogated, and it was actually a really fun session because one of the important people in Crodain is also one of the teachers of one of the players, and so he was shocked that the player was there. And so there was a really cool moment with that, and it continued afterwards into a conversation they had privately, which was really cool.
Oh, that's wow. I mean, I like that idea a lot. I do like that idea a lot. This god of balance being framed as a god of slaughter or death or chaos just because he was doing his divinely duty.
Yeah, and he explained in that meeting, he explains like they were trying to destroy these things, that the destruction of them would lead to mass chaos and an imbalance between the gods and the primordials, and we can't have that. And so it turns out the things that the players are currently trying to stop is the same thing Kruvesh was trying to stop thousands of years ago.
That's so awkward.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really fun gotcha moment.
Did they take it well? Did your players take it well? Like,
It was really. There was a lot of fun role play that night, and I think in the end it was taken well. It was a good moment of whoa, crazy.
I do know that in some groups, like when you have that kind of like revelation, people can like be upset about it. Like, oh, like I thought this was what was happening, and now it's not the case.
Well, so that's the thing. At the time, Kruvesh wasn't like he was such a unknown, such a we don't even know what he is, or we just know he's a primordial and he's deadly and there wasn't like a connection there as much. Like there wasn't like a we've been working for all our sessions to stop this and yet it failed. Or it was more of a we are stopping and hurting the Inquisition, which they still did. They hurt the evil group called the Inquisition, but they did not stop Kruvesh's resurrection. So there was still success in their failure.
So when your players like originally learned that he was the god of balance and not the god of slaughter, did they like side with him?
Well, so they didn't believe him. They were like,
Of course.
"No, we know you're Kruvesh the Slaughterer," and so it was a really fun where they were really in the role play of, "No, I've been told my whole life, I know this," and so Kruvesh had to work and be like he's a god, so he's like, doesn't really matter if you believe me or not. This is the truth. I have other things I need to do, and then they kind of
Okay.
now they're kind of working for a peace and a peace between the gods and the primordials, and so they have learned to work with him even if they still kind of don't trust him, especially the one that is the follower of the god of death. He is still like, oh, I don't trust Kruvesh at all, and it's great.
Yeah, that's kind of a whole dynamic going on now. But also looking at Netheril, to get back on a little bit on topic,
A little bit, yeah, it'd be nice.
tiny bit. I also think it'd be a really fun idea to make a society, a mageocracy, and have like a player in your game or like in a backstory, like experience the atrocities of the mageocracy to have a whole campaign kind of dedicated around that, like freeing those who maybe not are so magically inclined. Kind of that whole entire almost freeing the slaves type story arc. That'd be a really good idea as well to do, and you could steal it at least a little bit from Netheril.
Yeah, and I already have an like I would really want to play in a campaign like that. I already have an idea for a character. It would be one that a long time ago found out he had magical prowess, but he still cares about the people down there, and so he's like, I'm not gonna leave them by proving that I can, as the society would see me, better than them. I am one of them. We stick together, type thing.
Yes. See, I'd like to make if there was a campaign like that, I'd like to make a character, which I think I kind of did in your game a little bit with one of my half orcs, but just this like normal guy who really wants to learn and know magic, but is not magically inclined, but ends up finding like a book within a library that essentially is connected to his patron and he becomes a warlock, and then kind of fakes fakes that he knows how to use magic when in reality he really doesn't.
I think I remember that half orc farmer,
Yeah, he was a half orc farmer who
and you were the
who
only one to survive, and you went back home and lived on your
True.
farm because that was almost it was pretty much TPK. But your
Yeah, it
character's
was.
like, nah, I'm out. I'm out. Let's not.
So I think
And you
that'd be
let the world burn.
we did. I did. That'd be a really fun kind of character to play in that kind of world too,
I would.
who doesn't know how to use magic.
Oh man,
But
those would be such fun dynamics you could do with that. And so that's the thing. I have a lot of fun like places that I would like have. I think you could have really fun worlds and campaigns in, but it would really require the players to be committed to a story level of playing it out. Like I have places that I would like that magic is not allowed, and I would love to do a campaign set where you're there, but it would require the spellcasting players to be like, okay, I understand going in that it's going to be hard if ever I get to cast a spell, and they choose
yeah,
to
I
do
mean,
that anyways, and so they know that this is the world they're going into. And with that kind of knowing you're going to be a slave, you kind of have to have that same, okay, I understand this isn't going to be a crazy big adventure like becoming a god or whatever it is. This is a down to earth, awesome, really fun, but heavy role play campaign of I am going to have to act out and be a slave for a while.
yes, yeah, I remember. I love that type of campaign.
I do too.
I'm not necessarily a huge fan of my birds running around, but I'm not necessarily a huge fan of kind of like limiting magic in a setting. The only reason
Well,
for
no,
that
so
is 'cause
mine wouldn't be limited in the setting. Like magic exists as it does in Toral. Just it's like in Chris's campaign. We're in the north, and it's this kind of fear of magic there. But in his campaign, it seems like we're constantly being allowed to use magic, even in front of kings and stuff. And I would want to play it where that is very strict, where it's as strict as the lore makes it out to be. You
yeah, I
can't use
mean,
magic here.
yeah, like I said, I like that. I just think that oftentimes that like puts too many awkward situations that a lot of players won't want to deal with. Like, I mean, I know for like from my personal experience, I wouldn't necessarily want to like if I wanted to play a wizard, in a campaign, and then all of a sudden my DM is like, well, the problem is that you're gonna have to be like hiding it has to be a secret all the time. That's not necessarily something that I'd want to do.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's what I was saying. So it would require a commitment on the group, and they would all have to be okay with this before you could really play that out.
I like the idea of, I mean, at least for like an entry, a beginning type thing, would be to have your character from a nation that's like that, but then left to a nation that isn't like that. So then, like, if your characters go and visit, that's kind of the expectation that's already been laid upon the group, and
Mm-hmm.
not like a thing that's restricting character creation.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
But I mean, I love that kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff of like there's a certain group of people that are more so in power than the other group, and they're especially peasants versus leadership. Essentially, I love that type of campaign.
Yeah,
I mean, I was also thinking you could also make a even before like the whole creation of the spell and then destruction, but it would also be fun just to make like a bunch of floating cities that are different cultures, different groups of people, and throw them in your world because you could create like an entire groups of people without being anything related to anybody on like if you're running out of room in your world and you want to create a cool group of people, just put them in a floating city.
yeah,
Problem solved.
like the stacks in Chris's campaign, or all of the floating cities in High Rollers.
Right, Rollers does that a lot, which Mark has a very similar type thing to this, is where like there's the lowlands, the group of people who are barbarians who are, like essentially these like ruffians. They're not though, but that's what they're perceived as. And then there's the floating cities, which are like the classy, the high class groups of people essentially.
Yeah,
So I think that would also be a really fun type of world to like engage in is, even like diplomacy between you could even do a campaign of like diplomacy between the lower world and the upper worlds. It actually reminds me of a book. I can't remember the title right off the bat, but it's essentially about like it's like this world that's shaped in this like almost like a top, like a spinning top, where you have like a large base and then it kind of goes up and up and up. And as you ascend up, there are different groups of people, and the people on the bottom are thought as like lowlanders. And then when you go up top, it's like people who like they don't really know much about each other, but they just have these perceived notions of each other. And the whole entire book is like a story of the person trying to go up further top to see what it's like up there, which would be a really fun campaign idea. Also, to have like this whole entire section that's like above your world, like above the lowlands, and the players are trying to get up and just see what it's like up at the top. It would be kind of a fun thing to do too, like
that
a
is interesting.
campaign of exploration.
The only thing I could think of that's that kind of shape and style is in D&D, the Nine Hells. They're this kind of upside down pyramid almost of layers, and each layer is a different layer of hell. And actually, the one really cool thing about all the layers is that the river Styx flows through each one. It's actually a really cool connection point between each
Yeah,
one.
yeah. See, I like the idea of like that's how the book. I don't remember. It's annoying me that I don't remember the book name, but how the book does it is essentially this giant spire of earth that rises from the lowlands that goes way up almost into the clouds, kind of like a Jack and the Beanstalk type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the main character of that book is he wants to get up to the top to like that upper level, and so he's always trying to climb up there and stuff, even though it's like kind of against the rules, the law. So I think that'd be a really fun kind of like maybe just even intrigue point where like the players can see that there is some sort of world above them that nobody knows anything about, and to have this entire kind of exploration campaign where the players go up and try and get up into that upper part of the world, like this upper
Yeah, it's like
tabletop
a literal Jack and the
essentially.
Beanstalk campaign where you climb up there and it's this
And
giant world that
explore
you
that
have
whole
to
area. It'd be
explore.
kind of a fun type of campaign.
Yeah, that
Right.
would be.
Yeah. Like yeah, just like the nine hells, kind of like that picture, but instead of like you would like the lower base would be the tall, like the widest, and then you would have like a part extending from that, so you could like always see it. So like your character, like in the backstory, is like how I'd imagine it would be, like characters are always wondering or always curious what was at the top of there, or like every once in a while like they'd find like something that had like fallen from the top, or like like items or rocks or even trees or something like that that are just different than what they're used to. just to like intrigue the players to go up there would be a really, really fun idea, I think.
Now, you're going to think this is silly, but it is what I am thinking of when you talk about this. And it is pretty much the perfect picture of what you're talking about. It is Castle Aincrad, which, if you don't remember, that is from Sword Art Online. Yeah, so it's your favorite anime, Sword Art Online.
It's just the worst version of Log Horizon, though.
Yeah, you always liked Log Horizon. I one thing I didn't like about Log Horizon is you don't it's not a one death thing. You revive and you come back, and it's what's the point then?
Yeah, but you're just stuck
living a really fun.
for
You're playing a fun VR game is all you're doing.
yeah, I mean, you couldn't see your friends or family ever again, and you're
Who
stuck
cares? You're playing a
in
great
your
VR
VR world
fantasy
forever.
game.
True.
And I'm sure
But
if they really wanted to, they could log in.
true. But it'd be fun to like do a world like that where like the base is like really wide and like I
Well,
said I could picture
I
like
kind of like
characters.
in the picture of Castle Aincrad how the beginning is small, so you don't even know that there's anything up there, and that's the beginning of the campaign. It's just like 3 levels of you literally characters going to level 3, which you could even make it just 20 stories, 20 levels, and they have to figure out how to get to the next level, and that literally moves their level up.
I mean, yeah, you could definitely do that if you yeah, for sure. I mean,
Which would
especially if
actually
you're
make it super easy to make encounters because you know what level they're going to be when they're there.
yeah, if you wanted to do like a fun, especially like I would picture that more as like a really heavy combat oriented, like a dungeon type campaign where like you would just go up and up these levels until you get to the top and then win.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could easily add political elements. Like they need to, like there's people that have been stuck there for so long, and that's really interesting thing is that the people who get stuck there, they're also level 5. It doesn't, it's they couldn't be better than that because they haven't gone up to the next level, and so there's like huge cities on certain levels where people are just like done, they can't fight anymore,
Yeah, I mean that you could definitely add
and
like
kingdoms
cool
grow there,
political.
and you have to kind of convince them to fight with you to defeat whatever is blocking the way.
Oh yeah, you could definitely do something like that. Like you could definitely like make that a more intrigue campaign. I was just it just reminded me of like a 20th level like a 20 levels of dungeons and you just have to go through it.
Yeah,
And hope you
yeah.
survive.
I was thinking as big as Sword Art Online, so each level is like huge and has a bunch of different varied terrain and varied locations and whatnot and varied monsters, not just one
Yeah.
big dungeon because I
Yeah.
find those a real slog.
Oh, me too.
I
Me
mean,
too. I don't run
not everybody does. A lot of people love it, but
Oh yeah,
I
I
think it's
don't
a
run
slog.
very big dungeons. I can't do it.
I can't either. I'm like 5 rooms and I'm like I'm done. Nobody
I don't
wants
know.
to keep moving. 5 rooms, really?
Even as a player, it's just like going through so many dungeons to me is just not. I mean, it's fun for a little bit, but
It
after a
is.
while, just you open up a room, you fight some monsters, you loot, do it again and again and again.
Exactly.
But I mean, like I was saying, I was thinking more along the lines of which after you brought this up, with just like a character who always wanted to go up to this like different level and along their journey they ended up finding like some sort of item that had fallen from the top, and that could either be like hexblade warlock type thing, that could be a spell book, like it just all sorts of weird, you could
Yeah,
do all sorts of good
some
stuff
sort of
with that.
huge catalyst for the
Right,
rest of the
right,
campaign.
right. And then they instantly are like, we want to go up there and see what is up at the top, up at the top of the table, like what
Yeah.
do like it's like
Well,
it'd be
I
like
might have
mice
to.
living below a table and they want to know what's up on top of it.
Yeah, I might have to cut us off here. The recording's getting pretty long. It's gonna be a long episode.
Of course. Of course it is.
Well, thanks everybody who listened to this episode of Dungeoneered. I hope you liked it better than the last one, and hopefully it didn't sound like there was as many bird chirps in this one. So hopefully this will be easier editing on me.
True.
I think this is a pretty good episode, and I think it'll be good.
All right.
Thanks
Yep.
for listening. See you next time.
See ya.